Redfall. Welcome, ladies and gents, to my Day 1, or Day 2 technically, coverage of Redfall, the newest FPS to hit Xbox and Xbox Game Pass. I am Doodleman149, and let me just answer the thumbnail real quick. No, it isn't. So, now that I've lost 80% of my viewers, today I'll be giving you my initial impressions of the title, including my usual designations of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good and bad are self-explanatory, but the ugly refers to things that are negative about the game that are outside the game. So let's quit beating around the bush and sink our teeth into the latest offering from Arcane Studios. Let's start with some background info. As I just mentioned, Redfall is the latest game offered to us by Arcane Studios, the same people who brought us Dishonored and Prey. It is a single-player or co-op, open-world, PvE, first-person hero looter shooter where you select one of 4 heroes to fight back against the vampires that have taken over the town of Redfall. Each character has unique abilities that cater to different styles of play. Much like Borderlands, you choose one hero per playthrough and basically have different story saves for each character. Some background on me regarding this is that at the time of writing this and recording this, I have a grand total of 1 hour in the game, and I am playing on the hardest difficulty available during your first playthrough. I played it before work yesterday, Tuesday the 2nd, to get as much early footage as I could. However, 4:30 was the absolute earliest I was willing to get up, so that's what I got. As such, my preliminary experience may be limited, but I can still comment on what I've seen and played so far. First off, let's start positive with the good things about Redfall. I really like the art style. There are some textures that can seem a little muddy at times, but it isn't anything I immediately noticed, and that's the reason why I say I like the art style. It is very much like Dishonored, and that was such a cool looking game that I'm glad to see the style return here as well. I have a feeling some people will see this style and write it off as bad graphics, but I'm not sure they understand the difference. Oh well. Another really cool thing about the game so far is the story. The introductory sequence tells you all you need to know to get the basic understanding of the world you'll be entering, and they do it through a sort of comic book style with narration. Now, I know I'm dating myself here, but if you watched any of the narrated comics from the extras on the I Am Legend DVD, it is a very similar experience. It's creepy, it's well voice acted, and the story's interesting in basically every aspect. I was a little worried it would be more like Left 4 Dead with vampires, but I'm glad to see there's a better explanation for things. The looter-shooter aspect of this game really surprised me. It never really strikes me in a bad way, though. Where going into Ghost Recon Breakpoint, finding out that it was a looter-shooter completely tanked that game for me, amongst other things, going into Redfall and finding there are various levels to numerous weapons is actually refreshing. I think that will keep combat interesting if you have to find or buy better guns for you to progress. Speaking of buying guns, the currency system in this game is phenomenal. It makes perfect sense. You grab random bits and baubles to trade for favor within safe areas. You aren't swapping cash because the people of Redfall realize that money is basically worthless at the moment. You're earning the right to resources by acquiring other resources in the field. It's a unique take on the currency system that I've not seen since State of Decay. The gunplay for me is fun. The weapons feel pretty strong in their respective ranges, and while the enemy AI can certainly be a bad shot, when you are hit, it does pretty heavy damage, so I can see stealth being a preferred tactic for me, as too many enemies can likely overwhelm the player just through sheer volume of fire. There's no hyper-realism with headshots where one taps anything at any range, but there's still a good target to strive for, as it seems to be a multiplier of at least 2, but I haven't checked the footage to see what it is specifically. Much like with the opening crawl for the game, there are also cutscenes which are static images while the camera moves and uses voiceovers. I think this is a pretty effective and different way to show the passage of time or events unfolding. The one I'm specifically thinking of is the sequence after you liberate the first safe house. It's basically a montage of cleaning up and fortifying that I think would be tedious if we had to watch them move everything in real time. These cutscenes are also a great way to show off the arcane art style because it is very reminiscent of the ending crawl of Dishonored. The last praise I have for this game kind of leans into the art style I already mentioned, but it's the design of the vampires. They aren't just pale people with pointy teeth, they are appropriately otherworldly looking and are fairly scary to fight. They have long, lanky limbs, huge talon-like claws on their hands, and they move in a quick but oddly serpent-like manner. They are brutal and are exactly what vampires are supposed to be, and I love it. Now we've reached the section that I bet a lot of people on Twitter were waiting for, the bad things in Redfall. Unfortunately, well, unfortunate for those people I previously mentioned anyway, this list is not long and is primarily nitpicks. Let's start with a legitimate problem though. While I was cleaning the firehouse, the first safe house you need to liberate, I was going about my stealth killings only to be randomly disconnected from the Arcane servers. I'm purposely playing alone, I'm not hosting or anything, so why do I need a server connection to continue my single player experience? But that's a whole other can of worms, but needless to say, after it booted me back to the menu, I had to re-kill all the enemies again to continue. There luckily weren't that many, but if these server disconnects keep happening, this could be a serious mark against this game. Other than there was a moment where an enemy struggled to climb a ledge and just kind of disappeared for a while, and there was another time in the fire station where I turned on a sink and the texture of the water in the base of the sink was poorly angled and clipped through the side of it, looking rather silly while doing it. Other than these gripes, I don't really have any problems with this game at the moment. And now let us again address the ugly parts of Redfall. Just as with Atomic Heart, see my first impressions of that game as well, check the top right corner of your screen, Twitter was the enemy of this title. However, unlike Twitter being full of horny losers looking to whack it to robots, Twitter today was filled with people saying this is the worst game to come out on Xbox this year. Now, while I can't comment on games that released this year aside from Atomic Heart, if this is the worst game this year, then it has been a damn good year for gaming, hasn't it? Even if this is the lowest, it's plenty fun and definitely not an unplayable mess, at least not yet. I feel like as soon as a new game comes out, it's always the best or worst game yet, with people fighting each other to prove their point to the other. Nothing ever seems good enough, and while I'm not being complacent, I've got plenty riled up when the game releases and it's full of shit. Yeah, you, Battlefield 2042. I personally do not think this game deserves all the hate that it gets online. It's been out for a day, and the people who have jobs or lives that allow them to play 20 hours a day may have discovered things that I've yet to experience, but for the average working person with a family, there are certainly worse ways you could spend your time. I know you'll all have your own opinions about this. Whether or not those opinions are parroted from other people or original, I won't personally know. However, all in all, for me personally, this game does far more right than it does wrong. The art, the general gameplay, the story, the atmosphere, they are all very enjoyable, and I really had a fun hour this morning playing it, and I'm looking forward to playing more later as well. There are undeniable issues when your connection to what should essentially be an offline game fails and causes you to lose mission progress, and then just how hard is it for texture to be placed properly, people? Come on. However, those two things don't knock this title down nearly as far for me as it does for others. So even after further contemplation and explaining my points I made in my tweet this morning after my session, I am going to stick with my original rating of 8 out of 10. Those 2 points are lost for the connection issue and the visual bugs. I know it's launch day, but that shouldn't excuse the game from not having these problems. And so there we have it, folks, my first impressions of Redfall, the latest controversial game to hit the market. The goods definitely outweigh the bads when it comes to my initial impressions of this game. The story, atmosphere, art, and gameplay are all great to experience, but these could be marred by some technical issues that I wouldn't have expected within the first hour of the game. Now, whether you blindly follow reviewers or use them as a guide to forming your own opinions, I hope my little initial review was helpful or entertaining for you. I'm planning on doing a more complete rundown of however much time I get in this game by Sunday, so perhaps my opinions will change by then. However, I must admit that the first hour has me hooked and I am ready for more. Have you tried Redfall yet? If so, what do you play it on and what's your opinion so far? I presume every single person on Earth has more time with this game than I've had, so I'd like to hear your opinion on it, even if it's different than mine. I look forward to reading all your comments. Until we meet again, fellow vampire hunter, I have been Doodleman149, you've been awesome, and I will see you later.